This month's theme is a way of life that makes a difference. And today's topic is what you see is what you get. In June of 2012, I did a series on this thing called you. And on the last Sunday of that series, I did a talk on For the Greatest Good. So the first thing that I want to say this morning is that some of you are here today who probably were not here then. And it could probably be wise for me to repeat some of that to support you in becoming clear on where you fit into the total scheme of things. In that sense, we focused, when I was doing this talk, a similar talk to this before, on ways to deal with your own conditions, your own situations, your own expectations. And because those are the only things over which we individually have control, and we always do have control of our own, should we choose to accept the assignment, they are obviously the things to which we should give constant attention. And then in that talk back in 2012, I talked about moving to a new dimension, a higher dimension of thinking, that of realizing how interrelated, how interwoven our own greatest good is with the greatest good of all. In the Science of Mind text, Dr. Holmes says this: never limit your view of life. It's a question of sticking to an idea until it becomes a tangible reality. He goes on to say, the illusion is in the way we look at things. We have looked at poverty, degradation, and misery until they assume gigantic portions. Now it's time to look at harmony, happiness, plenty, prosperity, peace, and right action until they appear in at least the same proportions. I have a friend in California who's an inventor. He wanted to market his inventions, but he had one major hang-up that prevented him from doing that. What do you suppose that was? Money, or lack thereof. Yeah, that's usually the limiting factor, isn't it? But in Doug's case, that wasn't the limiting factor. What held him back was believing that his invention would put others out of business. Think about that for a minute. Who would he put out of business in the process of bringing a greater good? Right, that which didn't bring a greater good for all. So how is the greater good served by withholding that which is better? Right, it isn't served. Truth be known, though, if there is confusion, hesitation, fear in what is unfolding, it's because there is confusion, hesitation, and fear in the thought back of it. If there is trust, clarity, and dedication in what is unfolding, it's because there is trust, clarity, and dedication in the thought back of it. You know, in religious science, we are sometimes accused of being the feel-good religion, the get rich, get happy, get more folks. And although I've always thought that that was not a bad thing, I have observed that some people in this world consider it to be selfish, self-serving, or manipulative. So I want to set that record straight today. The whole reason for our spiritual journey playing out in this physical realm is to enable us to become aware of our surroundings and their meaning. The concept of goodness is always in the eye of the possessor. When we are still in a narrow band of consciousness, our idea of goodness is usually how it looks or doesn't look in that moment. And in somebody else, probably in everybody else, rather than in ourselves. So what we're doing is we're looking out there instead of looking in here. Then, as we begin to expand in our own consciousness, we come to realize that we can never really know what's best for anybody else, can we? But we can always know what's best for ourselves. Got a page that doesn't want to let go here. And eventually, we come to a realization that we are here to do what we were created to be, which is successful, happy, joyous, fulfilled. When we finally accept this for ourselves, then and only then are we ready to allow ourselves to see it in others, to observe the greater good. In Doug's situation, not bringing his invention to market and success meant that people who could and would have been saved by their use would not be. So clarity for everyone involved means rising above the false belief that whoever built or uses the current technology will be damaged by the new technology. The truth that countless people will be served by a new idea is how humankind has evolved. If we never had new ideas, humankind would never evolve. So the challenge is, do you want to advance humankind or do you want to stagnate it? Because we have no way of knowing that whoever is impacted by a new invention will not choose to support it and participate in its manufacture, its promotion, and its success. The truth is, what we think about comes about. When we trust in the wisdom that created us, we can know that all good and right ideas come from that universal source seeking to express by means of each one of us. And that continues to unfold. What was once a revolutionary idea will always be replaced by, guess what? Another revolutionary idea, which someone will benefit from in safety, in prosperity, in expansion. But no one can be damaged by the greater good unless they choose to be. The universe never plays favorites in that regard. Every one of us has limitless power at our disposal. If we don't bring our gifts to the world, someone else will. Because once we put an inspired idea into conscious mind, it will show up in physical reality. Horse-drawn carts, for example, were replaced by automobiles, trains, planes. Teepees and igloos were replaced by houses. Coal oil lamps by electric lights. And now by your iPhone, which has a light on it. For you see, we don't really want to see anyone fail. We want to see others succeed. When someone else fails or suffers, it calls to our minds limitation, lack, sometimes even pain. The greatest good is success. And when we see, feel, taste success, we recognize it. We recognize that it's for the greatest good of all, including us. When anyone succeeds, we all win. We have observed God at work in others. And we know that God works in us the same way. All of us have deep within us the desire and the intention to be the very best. What we must also honor in ourselves as well as in others is that life is always unfolding for our greatest good, even when our personal biases temporarily block our seeing it. If we always had all information about our own future and all of humankind, all life, we would always be able to see that. But the greatest good of all is always known by creative intelligence, because God is all. Each of us is all God, but we know God from a particular perspective, a personal perspective. What we must also know is that the greatest good is always done when the truth is released. What we also must know is that the greatest good is always done when we release and allow it to unfold. What we must also know is that the greatest good of all always includes our own greatest good, that which we will delight most in, that which is even better than we have imagined. Certainly for each of us, whatever our background, the realization that we can have a loving relationship with God is a lesson in the journey of our soul consciousness and serves the expansion of our spiritual awareness. So as we are freed from the slavery of limited thinking and actions, we are able to expand in consciousness, in awareness. I believe that for much of the world, the concept of for the greatest good of all is one that's long overdue. We are not placed here on this planet as a part of humankind to live in isolation any more than we are here to diminish or obliterate each other. There are compelling reasons why there are so many of us, why we are outwardly different from each other and exactly the same inside. There are equally compelling reasons why we must work to reduce the vast differences in the social and economic development of different societies. Each of us individually, and all of us collectively, need to place more attention on our commonalities in order that all of humankind progresses in awareness, in consciousness, in spiritual enlightenment. And there are compelling reasons why new ideas come to us that replace the old ones currently in place. Our work must always be to provide for the greatest good. And that changes as new ideas come forth, building upon what has existed up until now. For even in the midst of what looks bad to us, God is present. We can react automatically to what appears to be a bad situation, or we can actively seek to find the good. We have within us the capacity to find that good and to bring it into experience. I'd like to challenge each of you to think what humankind would be and do if everyone and everything were already at their best. Think what that would be like. And then as you put your attention on how beautiful, how delightful that would be, remember that you are moving into the consciousness of for the greatest good of all. And as we direct our thoughts to such an outcome, our intentions and our energies go in that direction as well. This is what is known as transformation. It works for us individually, and it works for humankind collectively. And the greatest good of all always includes our own greatest good, a life which is even better than we could have imagined. And so it is.